Bennington experienced the worst fire of its history in 1913. That fire reshaped the business district and the community's attitude toward fire prevention and firefighting. The Bennington Historical Society is pleased to present a short story of the events that led up to that fire, the fire itself, and how it shaped the Bennington Fire Department. The first evidence of an organized effort to fight and prevent fires in Bennington came in 1903, when the village board authorized the purchase of a pump and hose. The pump was bought from the Nebraska Plumbing Supply Company for $116, and that included freight. The board also purchased 50 buckets at 10 cents apiece, a large galvanized water tank, suction hose for the pumper, fire hooks, ladders, and fire axes. The following year, the city acquired a 40-foot extension ladder that it traded in exchange for the galvanized water tank. The town was prepared, or so it thought. In 1907, the Pioneer Town Site Company offered, and the city purchased the lot on Warehouse Street for a fire barn. The lot was purchased for $100. However, nothing was built. That was probably because there wasn't an organized volunteer fire department yet, just some equipment. Firefighting was probably left up to the city board and those residents that were able at the time to pitch in and help. The need for an organized and trained fire department hadn't become necessary, but that was going to change. The town was constructed entirely of wood at the turn of the century. Even the sidewalks were made of wood. It was too expensive to haul in brick or cement blocks to build. The community also depended upon fire for heat and light. Buildings were heated with wood or coal stoves, and lighting was provided by kerosene and carbide gas lamps. This is a 1901 photo of Specimen's Saloon, which was located on the northeast corner of Molly and Main Street. As you can see, the saloon used both kerosene and carbide gas lights. All this wood and open flames provided to be a dangerous combination, and to make it worse, Bennington didn't have a water system. There wasn't a faucet or a fire hydrant in town. If you wanted water, you had to go to the well or cistern and pump it by hand. Bennington's first major fire in the business district occurred August 11, 1911. The fire reportedly started in Pete Peterson's meat shop and spread next door to George Mangold's store, and it's believed to have also taken Eggert Off's harness shop to the east. Aftermath of this fire marked the first construction of 2 brick and cement block buildings in Bennington. George Mangold relocated across the street to the north and built a concrete block building, and the Bennington State Bank built likewise on the location of the old harness shop. The construction of both these buildings was made economically possible from a new cement block factory that was built in town by Orton Glant around 1910. It was located south of Warehouse Street along the railroad tracks in the Papio Creek. This is the earliest photo we have of Bennington's fire pump, and it was taken in 1911. We can tell that by the absence of the Peterson and Mangold stores, which burned in 1911, and the fact that the Bennington State Bank had not yet been built. It appears volunteers are testing the new pump in the city cistern, which was located in the middle of the intersection of Stark and Main Streets. Someone wrote Bennington's fire department on this photo, which is somewhat misleading to our standards today. Someone was undoubtedly responsible for the equipment, and it was probably manned by whoever was available and willing at the time. While the city had a lot for a fire barn, nothing had been built yet. Fred Peterson was paid $1 a month for the storage of the fire equipment. Orders were given that, quote, ladders and tools be loaned to no one except for town use, unquote. Equipment was stored at M.H. Fredrickson's barn in 1912. We're not quite sure where the barn was. The Fredricksons lived on Allen and Old Bennington Road, and the family also had a store on Stark and Main Street. It's suspected the equipment was stored at one of these locations. Disaster struck Bennington on April 29, 1913. It started in Off's Hotel and spread. One story suggests the fire started from a lantern that was broken in a saloon fight. The story was covered by the Omaha World Herald the following day in an article entitled, "Bennington is Swept by Great Fire." The article went on to say, "Fire in the center of the business district of this village this morning menaced the town. So serious was the situation at midnight that officials called upon Omaha for assistance. Chemical apparatus from that city, manned by a dozen experienced men, was rushed here on a special train that was made up at Irvington. The train arrived at 2:30 a.m. The blaze, fanned by high winds from the south, continued spreading at 1 o'clock despite the heroic measures adopted by the citizens here to check the advance," unquote. This photo was taken from what is now the front of the warehouse looking east. On the south side of Main Street, fire destroyed Off's Hotel, its ice house, Bert Seymour's blacksmith shop, and Fredrickson's store across the street to the east. This photograph is looking north across Main Street. To the extreme left is Hanson's meat shop. The Bennington House, a hotel and saloon, was located in the center, and that was totally destroyed. The Sportsman's Bar now occupies that location. To the right is Augustus Whitty's hardware store, which was severely damaged. The fire also spread across Stark Street to the east and destroyed Kirshner's store. The fire continued to spread north, burning 3 barns, damaging the roof of St. John's Lutheran Church and several other homes. Volunteers climbed on top of buildings to put out fires that started on wooden shingles. Hanson's and Whitty's buildings were saved by bucket brigades and by the fact that they had metal roofs. Both the Bennington State Bank and Mangold stores survived the fire. Amazingly, there was no loss of human life. The newspaper article went on to say, quote, "Bennington has no firefighting apparatus nor an organized water system. Because of this fact, the citizens were greatly handicapped in their efforts to check the fire spread. At first, it was deemed inadvisable to send apparatus from Omaha because of the lack of water, but finally the chemical engines were sent. A bucket brigade worked faithfully to the end, and to them great credit is due that the fact that the fire was held in check as much as it was," unquote. The 1913 fire burned the importance of a well-organized and trained fire department into the community's conscience. A month after the fire, a waterworks bond was passed by the city board. The $4,000 bond paid for a city well, water pump, and a cement block building to house the fire equipment. That building stood on the corner of Stark and Warehouse Street on the same lot purchased in 1907. The building had a bell on the roof to signal fire alarms, and it contained one room for the fire cart, one room for the jail cell, and one room for the city well. a volunteer fire company was finally organized and nearly 24 volunteers were represented. The building served the community for nearly 50 years. The department got its first fire truck in 1947 through generous donations from city residents, businesses, and surrounding farmers. The need and cost for better fire protection and rescue service continued to grow and soon exceeded the resources of most small communities. This was a problem not only for Bennington, but for small communities statewide. The state legislature developed a system of fire districts to solve the problem. The Bennington Rural Fire District No. 7 was formed in 1962, and it encompassed 42 square miles. The legislature also gave the district its own taxing authority, and today the fire department serves more than 2,000 households, and that number is growing with urban development. So much so, a larger facility is now needed. Demands continue increasing to a point where not only is a new fire station being built, there is also talk of the need for full-time staff not too far into the future. It's needed since the district responds to more than 500 calls a year. There's very few families in our community who don't owe a debt of gratitude to these volunteers. Bennington's volunteer fire department is one of the best in this nation. So join us in celebrating 50 years of service from the Rural Fire District, more than 110 years of service from the Bennington Fire Department, and the anniversary of the 1913 fire, which started this community's serious dedication to fire prevention. Congratulations! Join us in commemorating a century of dedicated service by thanking the Bennington Volunteer Fire Department. Thank you.